16 harsh business truths that cause 99% of entrepreneurs to fail. And if you can confront these truths, then you will be within the 1% of entrepreneurs that actually do succeed and actually reach their wildest dreams. So I'm going to go right into these 16 business truths that are painful, but once you embrace them, on the other side of it can be your ideal life and your ideal picture of a finished business. Welcome to another episode of the Bill Hauser Podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking through 16 harsh, cold, harsh, very, very difficult business truths that cause 99% of entrepreneurs to fail. And if you can confront these truths and stare down the eye of the tiger and face these truths, then you will be within the 1% of entrepreneurs that actually do succeed and actually reach their wildest dreams, which is what the majority of people never do. So I'm going to go right into these 16 business truths that are painful, but once you embrace them, on the other side of it can be your ideal life and your ideal picture of a finished business. Number one, everyone starts a business with a vision for more, but almost nobody gets their vision for more. That's truth number one. And this is a big deal because we start our businesses with a vision for more income, more freedom, more opportunity, more autonomy. But the question is, did you actually get that? Did you actually get your vision for more, right? And the truth is, most people don't get their vision for more, but everyone starts a business with a vision for more, okay? Number two is vision without a plan is hallucination, and a plan without knowledge is delusion, okay? Vision without a plan is hallucination. What does that mean? Vision without a plan is hallucination, and a plan without knowledge is delusion. What does that mean? Okay, vision without a plan is hallucination. You are hallucinating. Do you want to be a type of person that is hallucinating in business? A vision without a plan is that, because when you don't know how you're going to go from point A to point B, let's say you want to take a beautiful trip to the Niagara Falls, right? You want to see the beautiful waterfall. And let's say you're in southern Florida is where you live and you need to trek across the United States, right? Let's say you didn't look at any GPS on your way from southern Florida to Niagara Falls, right? Well, there's a chance you'll find your way there, but you're leaving it up to luck. You're leaving it up to your own intuition, and that's how most people fall into business, is they have a vision, but they don't have a plan. They don't have that GPS on how to go from point A to point B, and therefore they're constantly banging against walls like a ball in a ping pong machine, getting bounced back and forth, and eventually they lose track of that vision because they get bounced so far off the path of where they started that they actually end up changing their goals altogether. So vision without a plan is hallucination. When you're hallucinating, you can't see things straight, and you certainly don't take the most straight path towards your goals, which is one of the most surefire ways to fail. And the second part of that is a plan without knowledge is delusion. You are delusional if you start a business and your plan is, let's say you do have a plan, you do have a vision, but your plan is, I'm going to get 1,000 clients in my first month of starting my business. That's my plan, right? My plan is I'm just going to, magically have all these people want to buy from me, right? I've made this mistake before. When I started my first company, Worry 180, which was a ebook/training program I made on how I overcame anxiety, spent 8 months creating this course and wrote the book. And then I tried to promote it, and I thought all these people are going to buy it because I had no business wisdom. And my plan without knowledge ended up being delusion, and nobody bought the course. I ran out of money, and I had to go take a job after that point in time, and eventually start this company. And it was really, really painful. So vision without a plan is hallucination, and a plan without knowledge is delusion. If you refuse to be delusional, if you refuse to hallucinate in business, you must arm yourself with business knowledge, which we'll talk about more in the other truths. Number 3, everybody gets into business because they believe being a business owner is going to give them a better life. But for most business owners, it actually creates a worse life. Why? Because we think our business is going to be the platform for us to have all this freedom in our lives. But the truth is, the business actually gives you a tremendously higher amount of demands on your personal time. And it actually ends up creating the opposite, at least in the short term, for most people who start businesses. And most people never escape this from the short term, and it becomes their perpetual life. I know business owners who started their business 30 years ago. Their revenues have not grown for 30 years, and they are still treading water and still working 12 to 16 hours a day without seeing any progress in their business because they actually became addicted to the quality of life that was required in the startup phase, and they now have cut and pasted that to the later end of their life. You never want to be an entrepreneur like that, because here's the truth. Let's say you have a business that makes $400,000 a year in profit versus you make $400,000 a year as an employee. Any day of the week, for 99% of people, take the job that pays you $400,000 a year, okay? Because that is predictable income with much less stress, much higher predictability, and it's not worth it to go into business for only $400,000 in annual take-home income. It's just not worth it with all the stress you have to put in, all the personal responsibility, the anguish, employees quitting, the uncertainty around revenues. It's not worth it, right? So most people's lives actually get harder as a result of business rather than easier. So you want to flip this on its head. You want to actually define, if you want to conquer this truth, you want to define, what is my definition of a beautiful life, and how is my business going to give me a beautiful life? Okay, number 4. This is probably one of the most important of all of them on the list. Business ownership is a profession in and of itself. Business ownership is a profession in and of itself. Okay? Most people get into business because they believe that their profession is going to be what pays them. Meaning, let's say I'm good at baking cakes. That's my profession. That's my expertise. I'm good at baking cakes, right? That's my profession. Well, as soon as you go from being an employed person baking cakes to then running a business that bakes cakes, you will be in for a rude awakening, because you will very quickly realize that the skills required to bake a cake are extremely different than the skills required to run a business that creates quality baked cakes, especially if you're not the one baking the cakes. It requires the ability to build systems, the ability to hire A players, the ability to attract leads, the ability to sell and convert those leads into paying customers, right? So it's a completely different skill set. The reason 80% of businesses fail every 5 years, but 80% of professions don't fail every 5 years, right? Imagine if 80% of people who went to school to become a doctor failed in 5 years of becoming a doctor. It would be insane, right? Because the school system is designed to train us to be great employees. That's what the school system has taught us to do, right? So when you go to school to become a doctor, and you go become a doctor working for a hospital chain and you work for yourself, right? Well, you actually have a much higher chance of success than going out on the business for your own and starting your own doctor, practice, because in doctor school, you don't learn how to grow a business. That same thing applies to the trades. That applies to those who didn't even go to college and graduated from high school, right? We are not armed with the information needed. The profession of business ownership is not taught to us. There are no classes in school. I went to Temple University. I went to Penn State for 2 years, Temple for 3. And I didn't see a class on how to sell products, how to sell stuff to people, how to convince people to buy your products and services. But if I were to design the college system, that would be the first class I'd teach: how to sell products to people, right? Because if you can't sell products to people, you can't run a business, right? And if you can't contribute to selling products for a business, you're not going to get paid next to anything in a business, because sales is one of the most important metrics, outcomes of any business, right? So most businesses fail because society sets us up for failure, because everything is teaching us how to be better employees, how to be in that factory system. The schooling system was actually invented as a result of the Industrial Revolution to churn out factory workers, people who could, learn the minimum viable requirements of the areas required to have some generalized knowledge, and then a little bit and just enough information to know how to be employed, right? So this is hard because society in general has not grasped the fact that business ownership is a profession. So when you become a business owner, you now have two professions. You have the profession of what you do to make money when you start your business, like the actual trade of what you do. And then you have a separate profession, which is the business ownership profession. So that's hard. Business ownership is a profession in and of itself. Number 5, if you want to 10x your business, then for every minute you spend learning about your profession or trade, you must spend 10 minutes learning about business. If you want to 10x your business, you have to spend 10 times more time learning about business than you do learning about the craft of your business, right? So if you run a business baking cakes, like I said, that means for every minute you spend learning about how to continue building great cakes, you want to spend 10 minutes learning how to create a business that pumps out high quality cakes, right? Which again is a very different investment in learning. Garbage in, garbage out. The only thing you learn about is garbage or whatever the heck pops up on your newsfeed and social media. Distraction, distraction, distraction. Garbage in, garbage out. That means the results of your life are going to be garbage if you allow garbage in as your primary source of education. But if you put gold in, you get gold out, right? So you want to put gold, high leverage information and education in your brain on business ownership, entrepreneurship. Also, revolving around surrounding yourself with mentors who also run businesses and be successful, because that's how you're going to get the raw materials for success. Number 6, business is confusing at first and simple when you master it. If you were to watch a world-class chess game, right? Like a chess master play the game of chess, and you know nothing about chess, you're going to stare at that game with crossed eyes, confused. You're not going to know what the hell you're watching. And you're going to hear other people who understand the game of chess go, ooh, ah, watching that chess game get played. So in the beginning, that's kind of how it feels when you're in business. You kind of have these glossed over eyes when it comes to anything other than the actual profession, right? And over time, you actually, as you start to master the principles of business, you start seeing it so much more simple. And wisdom, the best reflection of wisdom that I've ever found, is when you've gotten so masterful at something that you're able to simplify it to its fundamental pieces, and you're able to come back to those first principles constantly. You know for sure somebody doesn't truly understand something when they're constantly overcomplicating it, right? So business is confusing at first and simple when you master it. You will get to a point in time, if you invest in your business education, invest in learning from people who are beyond you in business, you will get to a point in time where business becomes the simplest damn thing you've ever done, okay? Number 7, systems over heroics, okay? Systems over you being the hero. Now, this is the truth, okay? All entrepreneurs, I believe, are heroes, right? If you look at the fact that most jobs created in North America are created by small businesses, over 50% of jobs. Like, small businesses are the backbone of America. Small businesses are what are keeping us from getting eaten alive by corporate monopolies. Small businesses are what give people autonomy in their lives, creativity, new ideas all come mostly from small businesses. I mean, there's a couple businesses that are big that have innovation departments and treat themselves like small businesses, but like most of the big innovations in this world come from small businesses. So innovation, jobs, autonomy, creativity, a lot of this comes from small jobs. So honestly, entrepreneurs are the heroes of today's generation, but the problem is this. Heroism is not scalable. If you are the hero in your business, okay, your business is not scalable. If you're the smartest person in your business, right, then your business is not scalable. So you need systems over heroics. What that means is going forward, your team has to be the hero. And in order for your team to be the hero, guess what needs to be the hero? Your systems. Your proven business systems should be so dialed in that everybody on your team is the hero. Because your proven business systems allow your team to succeed. Okay, systems over heroics. Okay. Another truth, and this is hard, and you got to accept this, is the biggest companies are not always the best companies. This is a harsh, harsh truth. Okay. If you go look at what is the number one car maker in America, let's say it's Toyota right now. Okay. Is Toyota the best car manufacturer, or do they produce the most cars because they have the best business system for selling and producing cars, right? Is Starbucks actually the best coffee? Have you ever gone to a local coffee shop that had more, nuanced and better tasting coffee than Starbucks? I bet you do. I bet you can think of a place in your local market that has better coffee than them. But are they bigger than Starbucks, right? Domino's at one point, or maybe still, is number one in pizza. Domino's does not serve the best pizza. But all these companies have found a way to create the best business that produces the product, which is not everything needs to be some amazingly perfect concoction. Like, same thing with McDonald's. Sells the most hamburgers in the world, but does not have the best hamburgers. These are two separate things, right? They have the best hamburger production system and sales and marketing system and pricing system and location selection system, right? So therefore, their business ownership skills win, and therefore they sell more hamburgers than anyone else. So the best business is not always the biggest business, and vice versa. The biggest business is not always the best business. So that is a fundamental truth, won't change, and you got to decide what is it you want to be. And if you want to be both, great, create a business system around both. Biggest and best. All right, number 9. Business owner is an identity. Nothing more, nothing less. So most practitioners, people who are experts at things, they actually have the identity of the thing they're an expert at, right? So again, if I bake cakes, I call myself a baker, right? If I'm a lawyer, I call myself a lawyer, right? If I'm a doctor, I call myself a doctor. If I'm a contractor, I call myself a contractor, right? When people ask what you do, you could immediately expose what somebody identifies as, right? I don't identify as I've always had trouble telling this, what do I do? When people ask me, what do you do, Bill? I say, I'm an entrepreneur, right? And that's because that is what I do. I make financial decisions for my company. I make the big sweeping executive level decisions for the company. That's what I do. I do entrepreneurship. I decide where to deploy assets. I acquire the best talent I possibly can for my team. Like, that's what entrepreneurs do. But I'm not in the coaching or marketing business or fractional executive business, although those are services my company provides. I am an entrepreneur. So business owner and entrepreneur is an identity. Once you have decided to practice the profession of business ownership, then you're starting that gateway of actually changing your identity to that of a business owner, okay? If you love the practice of doing the work more than you do running the business that does the work, you will always stay trapped in a practitioner identity, okay? So you got to start loving the business more than you love doing the work within the business. Number 10, you will never build a business greater than your level of business education. This is the ultimate lid, right? If your business education is that of $1 million business owner, you will never outgrow your education, right? You will never outgrow and build a 10, 20, 50, $100 million business if your education is that of a $1 million business owner. It's impossible because your education is, again, the fuel through which you create plans, the fuel through which you craft a bigger vision. If you have no education around what's even possible in your business, you're going to have a smaller vision than someone who does. If you surround yourself for 2 years with someone making hundreds of millions of dollars a year, you surround yourself with that person, you get lunch with that person, you learn from that person. Eventually, over time, you're going to start thinking, this doesn't seem all that hard. I think I can actually get, closer to this number than I originally thought. So business education isn't just about what to do on a daily basis. It's also about expanding your vision, so that your picture for what's possible in the future gets like so much bigger. And when your vision is bigger, you're able to take tremendously more action on your vision because the outcome, the stakes are so much higher. So you'll never build a business greater than your level of business education. Number 11, the definition of a business is a commercial profitable enterprise that works with or without you. I'll say that again. The definition of a business is a commercial profitable enterprise that works with or without you, right? And most people don't have a business, they have a job, right? If your business requires your personal time input on a recurring basis, you created a job for yourself. Now, there's whole different qualities of jobs, right? You could have a business that does not work with or without you and profit with or without you. And you could have a job in that case. Or you could have a job, a case of a business that works with or without you. But let's say you still, just because you don't have anything else to do with your time, you still just spend 10 to 12 hours a day working in the business just because you're bored and you want to. Either way, you're creating a job for yourself. However, there's different qualities of jobs. Jobs of choice and jobs of necessity. You always want to have a job of choice, not necessity. Meaning, if you're going to have your business be a job, if you're going to have your business be dependent on you, which is, how most businesses are, they're somewhat dependent on the owner in some capacity, great. Then choose to have your business be optional, your time involvement in it, right? Instead of being needed in all these parts of your business, create an environment where you have backup plans, you have staff, you have team members that can replace yourself so that you can go on a 3-week vacation and not be needed in anything of your business. Or you could choose to not go on vacation for those 3 weeks and choose to work. That is a job of choice rather than a job of necessity. You always want a job of choice. Or you want to remove the job altogether and truly become the owner of a business, not the doer of a business, right? I always come back to the Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett concept around Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett own the majority of Coca-Cola, but they don't work in the day-to-day of Coca-Cola, and yet they make 20 times more per year from their investment than the active CEO of Coca-Cola, who is in every board meeting. That's the difference between owning a business and doing and jobbing in a business. Okay, number 12. You don't work for yourself when you go into business. I always hate this. This is a big pet peeve that I have. People say, I work for myself. I work for myself, right? The truth is, you are on call for every client fire. You are on call for every team member problem that pops up when you run a small business. You are not working for yourself. It's not like elevator music is playing in your headphone. Do, 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 do. This peaceful elevator music. You show up to your desk. You work for yourself all day. You don't talk to anyone. You don't have any needs from anyone. You don't have to serve anyone. No. As soon as you go into business, you absolutely do not work for yourself. You work for others. You work for your clients. You work for your team, right? So remove this from your head. And quite frankly, if you want to work for yourself, you're probably not going to cut it as an entrepreneur, because nobody wants to work for a self-centered leader that's all about, their own personal goals or things that they want from their business. You've got to have some others focus, right? And you got to be okay with that in business. If you want to work for yourself, go start a farm, live on the land, create all your own food, eat your own food, and live like the Amish. That's working for yourself, okay? So, next one is you get started in business to solve your own needs, and eventually you play the impact game. You get started in business to solve your own needs, and then eventually you have to transition to playing the impact game, okay? So all of us get started in business solving our own needs, right? If you look at 99 out of 100 entrepreneurs, they're going to say the main reason they started their business was, I needed money, right? It's a combination of I needed money and I was dissatisfied with my current situation, right? And third is I was skilled at something, right? But almost every person who starts business does it from a perspective of I need money, especially when you're self-created and you don't have money that you're sitting on. So you start the business to solve your personal needs. I need money. And then eventually your survival needs get met. And if you continue that for too long, your culture will be all about, again, serving your personal needs. And there's a point where we then have to transition to, instead of me running this business for my own survival needs, I need to expand my impact. I need to have as big an impact. I need to make a name for myself. I need to make a name for my company that stands the test of time. I need to become others focused in the impact and the mission of this business, right? And as soon as those survival needs are met, that's exactly when this transition has to happen. And most people never make this transition. This is why most businesses flatline. And this is why the abysmal statistics of how many businesses break the $20 million mark is so gut-wrenchingly small. The amount of businesses that break the $100 million mark is even crazily higher in terms of the dropout rate from 20 to 100 million. It is absolutely insane. And it's not that it's harder, it's that most people's survival needs get met and then there's no additional mission, vision, or bigger impact that someone wants to have. So they cap out and they just flatline. Number 14. Schools were designed to make workers and employees, not entrepreneurs. And this hasn't changed for over 100 years, okay? Or hundreds of years even. I mentioned this earlier. You will never outgrow your level of business education. Business ownership is its own profession in and of itself. But schools were designed to make workers and employees, not entrepreneurs, not business owners, okay? So if this hasn't changed for hundreds of years, if that's what the school system is, if that's what 99% of people are doing, then you need to choose to follow a different path. You need to create your own school system. I want you to create your own personal school system. And that school system is write out all of your goals for your life. And then I want you to, on left side of a piece of paper, write out all your goals in your life. And on the right side of the paper, write out all the things you must learn to accomplish those goals. I'll say that one more time. It's this simple. Write out all your goals in your life on left side of the piece of paper, and then draw an arrow to the right side of the piece of paper, and then say, what do I have to learn to accomplish this goal? What do I have to learn to accomplish this goal? What do I have to learn to accomplish this goal? And then boom, that becomes your new school. And the beautiful thing is, in the information age, we have access to all this information. There's tens of thousands of books written on every conceivable topic you could ever imagine. ChatGPT, you can get answers. The question is, do you know what you need answers to? And the best place to start of where to get answers is in direct relation to what your goals are. So, number 15, there are only 5, count them, 5 numbers that actually scale a business, okay? Only 5 numbers that actually scale a business. Number 1, your lead generation number. Number 2, your conversion percentage, what percent of leads you turn into a customer. Number 3 is your average transaction value. Number 4 is your customer happiness metric, which is your net promoter score, as we call it. Number 5 is your profit percentage. And if you can control these 5 numbers, I want you to become a mathematician in terms of your business destiny relies on you controlling these 5 numbers. This is the guaranteed success model. If you can increase the number of inquiries of people who want to buy from you, that's called increasing your leads. Increase the percentage of those leads that end up buying your service. That's your conversion percentage, which is controlled by your sales process. Increase the average dollar amount that an average customer or client spends with you, right? Your average transaction value. And increase your customer happiness so that clients are wildly happy with your service, which means they'll continue to pay their bills, they'll refer friends and family to you. And then last but not least, control your profit percentage, both your gross profit and net profit percentage, meaning how much does it cost for you to deliver the service and how much does it cost for you to run the entire business, gross profit, net profit. You control these numbers, you can actually make any amount of money or net worth that you want if you can control these 5 numbers in business. The trick is the skills you have to learn, the knowledge you have to acquire to deserve to control those 5 numbers. But the 5 numbers will never change. It's just math. And last but not least is number 16. This is probably the second most important one. If the number one most important one is the fact that business ownership is a profession, which I think that's probably number one, is treating business ownership as a separate profession in and of itself. This is probably number two. The critical skill missing in 99% of businesses is how to sell your products and services. How to sell your products and services at scale. Every entrepreneur must first and foremost be a great salesperson. To sell their product, their vision, their employees to join their company, all of this requires some form of communication. Like Warren Buffett said, he took a Dale Carnegie course when he was younger. He said it was the best $1,000 he ever spent in his entire career, and it was a personal development course on how to communicate, how to persuade, how to public speak, right? Because if you cannot speak what you want and get other people behind it and craft a vision behind your words, from your words, nobody's ever going to follow you. So selling is not just selling your products and services. Let's expand it. It's also convincing people to become a part of your mission, convincing people to be employed by your company, convincing customers in mass to be attracted to your company, convincing, persuading your everything in your company, your vision across your team. It all stems from having a skill of knowing how to sell. And sales is, for some reason, frowned upon. There's no course on it. There's no college courses on it. And if someone tells you they got a career in sales, most people go, oh, really, sales? You know, why didn't you get a real job? That's how the majority of the public reacts to it, right? Remember, if you do what the public does, you're going to get the results that the average public gets. So do the opposite of what the public does. If everyone's criticizing something, if everyone's saying, oh, I don't want to be a slimy salesperson or whatever, there's something there. There's something insecure deep within people that have caused this narrative that somehow selling products and services, which is the minimum requirement of being in business, if you can't sell products and services, you will not have any top line revenue in your business. Therefore, you will not have a business. So if you can't sell products or services, you have a negative relationship to sales, get out of business because sales are required. And by the way, if you have a negative relationship towards sales, you should quit whatever job you're in right now. Because newsflash, any company that you're working for right now is making sales in order to afford paying you your salary. So if you're so resistant towards sales, just quit. Just go live like the Amish. Again, start your own farm, grow your own vegetables, and run away from sales, right? But the economy doesn't care. The facts don't care that every single business that employs people is making sales somehow, some way, some shape, some form. If you can't make sales, you can't have a business. And if you can't have a business as an entrepreneur, you can't employ people. You can't give freedom to people. You can't give autonomy to people. You can't be that injection of creativity into local economies. And you no longer are the hero, in my viewpoint, if you can't do that and you call yourself, an entrepreneur. And this relationship has to change. It has to. You should be proud about selling your products and services. If you're not proud of selling your products and services, well, I guess that means your products and services aren't that good. Because why wouldn't you be proud? Why wouldn't you be treating sales like I'm saving someone's life? We call it the heart transplant analogy, right? If I have a loved one, let's say a loved one of mine has a heart attack, and I find let's say they're searching for, they're going to do a heart transplant, and we're looking for 3 months, right? We can't find someone to, provide the heart transplant heart. What would I do in that situation if a loved one of mine needed a heart transplant, right? Would I just go, oh, I don't really like sales. I don't like being pushy. I'm not going to call them and tell them that I found a donor to save their life, right? I don't want to be pushy. Or would you pick up your damn phone and say, hey, I found the heart. This is going to save your life. What would you do, right? If you look at your service as finding the heart for someone who needs a heart transplant that you love, what the hell do you have to feel bad about selling? That's what you're doing. You need to be on a mission. If you don't believe in your product enough to sell it, you need to question why that is the case. And oftentimes, most of this baggage is in your own head because no product's perfect. There's never been the history of one company that made 100% of its customers happy. And people associate unhappy customers as this thing, this resistance around sales, but unhappy customers is part of business. If you can't deal with a couple people being unhappy with your products or services, it's another reason to get out of business, because it's going to happen. And the more important the service you sell, the more unhappy people have the propensity to be. Okay? So think about this. If we're just selling sugar cookies and someone buys a sugar cookie from me for 50 cents, how pissed off can they really get? I'm selling them a freaking sugar cookie. I'm not selling them a heart transplant. I'm not selling them some crazy important thing. But look at it alternatively. Our company does marketing services for people. Some of our clients, all of the leads their business generates depends on our marketing services. So I expect people to be pissed off when the amount of leads they get in a month aren't what they expected. If that's how their business is surviving, is from our marketing, yeah, I expect them to be pissed off every now and then, because we're providing a heart transplant level important service to them. So expect it. Expect customer dissatisfaction if you're going to scale your company, but don't let it fool you into thinking that, oh, I don't want to be pushy because there's been some people who have been unhappy with my service before and I just want to fly under the radar and I don't want to get too many clients. No. Dissatisfaction is a minimum requirement if you're going to provide a high value service to people. So those are the 16 harsh truths about business that most people don't tell you. And if you can confront these truths and you can face them and you can solve them and you can innovate your way through them, you will find yourself in a transformationally different position in your life and in your business. And you will look back on all of the cobwebs in your mind that maybe you have some right now in your mind around some of these harsh truths that you need to work through. You need to cut through the clutter. You need to break all these cobwebs away and create clarity in your mind as to what is your vision, how am I going to get there, and how am I going to push all these cobwebs away so that the path to my vision is so clear, the educational path towards my vision is so clear that I can't help but reach it. So hope you got value from this episode. These harsh truths will never change. These are foundational truths that will never change. So you can take these to the bank. I'll see you in the next episode.